So this talk is entitled Old Wine in New Bottles, but it's actually not about wine. It may be a little bit, and there will be wine, but in the metaphorical sense. Wine has history. It has richness. It has resonance from its region, its age, its character, its generations. It's alive. It has a story to tell. What I'm really going to talk about is how great hotels are alive and have important stories to tell. Mine is a story set in present day, informed by generations of my family, a story of a family reclaiming and revitalizing historic buildings, a story of reimagining the powerful space within these buildings and bringing it to life through hospitality, a story about the rituals of renewal that these spaces ignite within communities. So why has my family had a thing for old buildings all this time, almost 4 generations? It's exhausting, to be honest, but historic buildings transformed through hospitality are living, breathing beings. They bear witness to the path of human history. They embrace the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. So our family actually believes that these buildings speak to us, not in a creepy way. But why do we think if these walls could talk is something people say? Because they do. Built in 1773, the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, has been owned by our family for over 50 years. And when I was a kid, the inn was like a palace. It still is. But I used to don my best princess dress and go there, be on my best behavior. And I remember when I was 6 or 7, wandering, which we did a lot, down the 4th floor hallway, I came upon this older gentleman who was just kind of staring into the abyss. And I shyly said, well, what are you doing, sir? And he responded, I'm listening to history. And I said, well, what's it saying? And he said, well, someday you'll hear it, but you must listen very carefully. So it was a little spooky, but I felt connected to some deep truth that I didn't understand at the time. But I do now. It took almost 50 years. So what have I heard, and what have I learned by listening? I've learned that it's actually the feeling that we give people in our hotels when we're doing it right. The emotions that come from those experiences that can revive and regenerate and refresh us. As the present leader of the Red Lion Inn, this is where we focus with our incredible team. 2 profound moments of listening from the past and the present that have informed me come from different generations from our amazing archives. That one has Longfellow in it. Bobby Corbett, October 17th, 1866 in Stockbridge. 134 of us, fathers, brothers, sons, came from Stockbridge, and we went off to the bloodiest battles of our War of the States. 27 never came home. I returned today to Stockbridge for the Soldiers' Monument Memorial, and I'm comforted to see that the Red Lion Inn still stands in all of its welcoming glory. It too has survived this bitter conflict. I thought of my father, how he used to bring me to the inn for these special occasions, and how proud he would be on this one. That's our friend, Mr. Franklin Roosevelt there. One from just this past spring. Again, we get these letters all the time. So this one from Mary Bartlett. I arrived at the Red Lion Inn recently. This is April. My mother had recently passed away. I missed her terribly. When I walked up to the porch and saw the cross-section of humanity sitting in the warmth of the afternoon sun, the front door welcoming me with that creaky love, which we will never replace, the lobby cat brushing against my leg with purring tenderness, the smile of the young woman who greeted me. I knew my mother was in that lobby telling me, breathe and live. I am there with you. Life is good and warm and fragile. It's very emotional. And I brought you there as my mother brought me there, and you will bring future generations. Life goes on. See, there's the cat. That will be a theme. These stories make you listen to past, present, about the power of the porch, the power of a smile, the power of a memory, the power of that cat. So we believe that these feelings, warmth, welcome, remembrance, gratitude, the human spirit enduring, they're the best products that hospitality can create, and they're worth investing in. Our guests have such a strong sense of ownership of the Red Lion Inn that if I literally move a piece of furniture, we get feedback, lots of it. But it's great. We love it, and we welcome it. So great hotels, if we agree on these 2 concepts that I'm putting down here, that historic hotels are truly alive, and they celebrate the past, the present, and these possibilities for the future. Check. And great hospitality has a unique ability to enable these historic buildings to speak and live fully in the present. So at the moment we're living in, it feels a time of compartmentalization, communication through these screens and devices. We live in a time of generational separation, compartmentalization, X, Y, Z, Gen. I don't really know which one I am, ever. But what's getting lost in this scenario? I submit that it's these intergenerational riches that we're missing out on, these contacts, these traditions that connect us and bind us. So great hotels, we believe, in historic buildings, can ignite and sustain and celebrate this intergenerational life. They invite different ages, backgrounds, perspectives to engage with each other in diverse ways, even if it's at the bar, which is usually the best place to do that. These rituals of connections are sacred rites at the Red Lion Inn. The human journey is embedded in everything we do, from the very fabric, in the fabric of what we do, from beginning to end, from baby showers to birthdays to weddings to anniversaries, reunions, memorials, proms. Thanksgiving is something to behold if you want to see a cross-section of generations and community. So we believe that this continuity and connection are essential to a healthy life. Imagine picking up some wisdom from somebody older than you in a rocking chair on the front porch. Or better yet, grandma learns how to share your wisdom on Instagram, which may or may not be what you want, but it's happening. So I speak from intimate experience about intergenerational wisdom. And I hear that wisdom in the voices of my family in my everyday work. So my father, David, moved here in the 1970s from Philadelphia, where he was in architecture school, with his best friend, Richard Saul Werman, who actually founded the TED conference way back when. There they are, doing their thing back then. They studied and worked with Louis Kahn, who was a world-renowned architect, who believed that if you listen to the building, it will tell you what it wants to be. That form actually evokes this function, doesn't necessarily follow it. So I hear these voices of Dave and Ricky and Lou all the time in the work that we're doing. My father reclaimed and revived a complex of old buildings on a turn-of-the-century property in Lenox that was the original School of Jazz right next to Tanglewood, and evolved this historic site into a whole new community called the Music Inn. It became a hub for expression, renewed epicenter for hippie hospitality, music, art, movies, counterculture freedom center of the Berkshires for 10 years. And the Music Inn buildings were ultimately repurposed, and our family actually still lives in one of them. Our dining room table sits on the same brick floor where Duke Ellington played jazz in the 1950s. So we hear these voices constantly and this kind of enduring impact around restoration. So right around the same time, Jack and Jane Fitzpatrick purchased the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge to house their growing curtain business and actually save the inn in the meantime. It was slated to be demolished, if you can believe that. It was going to become a gas station, we believe. Whatever it was a time where history was being discarded easily, right? Jack and Jane believed in the importance of preservation and renewal, and I hear their voices every day in the Red Lion Inn. They believed strongly in engaging the community to feel ownership of their historic spaces. Jack even went to his friend Norman Rockwell at the time to invest in the inn. Norman understood the Red Lion Inn was essential to this community life he was depicting in Stockbridge. When Norman asked his wife Mary about investing in this hotel scheme, she firmly said, "No way. A hotel investment is way too risky," and I hear you, Mary, now. But Norman assured Jack that he could engage him to entertain his guests, and he could use him. He was already quite famous by then. And help him to bring people to the inn and help it thrive. So this kind of tenacious and vigilant voice of Jack and Jane permeate the halls of the Red Lion Inn. We hear them a lot. So it was around this time that Jack and Jane's daughter, Nancy, finds Dave, the Pied Piper of the hippies, who we mentioned earlier. They get together and start a new chapter and a new generation. This is what a hippie wedding looks like in 1976. Nice hoodie, Dad. But Nancy, in her almost 3-decade stewardship of the inn, or the second generation, G2 as we call it, she fostered the importance of, and benefits of intergenerational continuity within our family and wanted there to be opportunities for all of us, and there have been many. This is what our modern family looks like now. And my brothers Casey, Mike, Morgan have all contributed in different ways over the years. My husband Tim, my sons Henry and Fred, my stepfather Lincoln, my sister-in-law Sadia, countless cousins, and hopefully my 2 beautiful nieces, Pani and Aya, will maintain this generational connectedness. There's a family org chart later if anybody wants to see it. It's a little complicated. It's a flow chart, but you need to see it. But after, so I went to college. I spent 20 years out in the world doing stuff, working in big corporations, actually. But even though they were global, what was interesting is they were family businesses where the founder's vision was alive with each successive generation. And it wasn't until well into that chapter that I realized how much I valued that. There was a moment when these insights came together for me and really changed the course of my life, where I heard those voices of the generations very clearly. In 2011, Jack Fitzpatrick died. I was living in France, flew home, of course, to be there. The service honoring his life at Tangwood's Ozawa Hall was packed. As I sat with my family, it struck me, kind of one of those aha moments that we all have in life, where a clear, strong voice was asking if I could carry this forward in some way into the next gen. And so it hit me that I finally understood what that old guy on the hallway was talking about, right? You've got to listen and be tuned in, and you finally get it. It took some time for our third generation, G3, to figure out how to carry the torch, what to do with the torch, right? What's it all about? And truly, we realized it's about the larger community. Okay, great hotels are about people that they serve. Not only the guests, the staff, the surrounding community in which they live and thrive. We believe that these hotels, these properties should contribute, not detract, right? Think about them. They never close. The lights are always on. There's always someone there. There's a consistent presence night and day, which is different than other kinds of businesses. I don't think that the front door at the Red Lion Inn has ever been locked, if you can imagine that. So even in this crazy moment in March 2020, which you may remember, we had to shut down, and we didn't know if we would ever reopen. Our core team was there. My two sons, my husband were vacuuming and dusting and working alongside our skeleton staff, waiting anxiously for that moment when we could reopen. And we finally did in June 16th, I think. There were tears, right? Guests told us in person with masks and 6 feet away and whatever, how grateful they were that we had made it through, and they couldn't imagine their life without the Red Lion Inn, which creates no pressure at all for us, right? But it's an honor. So during crazy times, these great hotels, places of safety, refuge, comfort for people in the community. That's a picture that we take every year with the staff on the porch. These places are a tonic against isolation and loneliness. They're a crucible for shared experience. They foster connection, civility, human oneness. In this fast-paced world, hyper-mobilized, sometimes scary, we need these community gathering spaces more than ever. So my grandparents, parents, siblings, our incredible teams have carried this torch with the idea that good business and good citizenship, through outreach, through partnership with the community, is a value worth preserving. So we do this at the Red Lion Inn and our other properties in many ways. We open our doors to the community. We host them, host organizations, right? Invite the community to use the hotel, not just heads in beds. Encourage team members and staff to lead community efforts and things that are important to them. Invest in cultural expression all around us. Provide access to diverse backgrounds, generations, perspectives, and create a pulse, like a heartbeat for a downtown, through employment, through gathering, through family ritual. So if you're with me thus far with these concepts, believe what I'm saying, it's kind of a recipe, right? It's a recipe, a secret sauce, if you prefer that word. It's not that secret, but it's worth going through the recipe here, which is step one, to reclaim and renew some historic buildings, give them a voice so they can speak again. 2, reinvigorate intergenerational life that we believe is essential to a healthy society. Step 3, revitalize communities by being a civic heartbeat, an epicenter. Mix well, right? Bake at 400 for a generation or two. And if we believe this works, and we do, then we need to spread it, right? We need to keep spreading it, make it sustainable. So we're trying to do that. So this is what porches up in North Adams looked like when Nancy first laid eyes on it. My amazing stepmom, Nancy, started the G2 era, as I said, at the Red Lion Inn, but was also a founding board member of Mass MoCA up in North Adams, this world-class art museum. The story goes that she and Jack Wadsworth, a co-founding board member, were standing together in the grand gallery at Mass MoCA, looking out at these derelict workers' housing from the original Sprague Electric factory. Nancy said, "Jack, let's make a hotel out of those buildings." And Jack replied, "That is the stupidest and craziest idea I've ever heard." But of course they signed, I think maybe on a napkin, and Porches was born in 2001. There was vision, there was courage, there was investment, there was innovation through using existing materials at hand to create something new. This recipe, if you will, this kind of recipe for rejuvenation, manifested as this sort of daring balance of historical materials mixed with contemporary flair. And Nancy employed these ingredients from the past with a nod to heritage, not too much nostalgia. She's a pioneer in the field of granny chic. And she didn't even have Instagram or Pinterest at the time, which makes it even more impressive. But the reinvention of North Adams had begun, and Porches remains a beloved place over 20 years later. So what's the point, right? If it's making millions, I guarantee you there are a billion other easier ways. But investing in the renewal of these historic spaces and creating great hotels with exceptional hospitality inside them, it does pay back in a multitude of ways. So to keep carrying this forward, we created Main Street Hospitality in 2014. And we're trying to spread this around as much as possible and sort of double down on the values that we really believe in. Intergenerational respect and interaction, historical listening, learning, wisdom, community togetherness, rituals of connection from cradle to grave, and a sense of security and endurance in fragile times. So I think I'm actually going to change the title, which was Old Wine in New Bottles, to actually New Wine in Old Bottles. New wine is you guys, right? And all this new energy. There are a lot of old buildings that need us. And I invite you to think about how you might be part of this movement. So much is disposable and fast and forgettable. And I think we need to make places that are not that, right? Let's make places that lift people up, contribute to positive evolution, places that would be deeply missed if they weren't there. So I ask you to consider, when you stay at a great hotel, whatever your favorite one is, steeped in history maybe, be open to being changed. Make a connection, leave an imprint, sign the guest book for history, take the recipe forward, and become a catalyst for a better community and maybe a better world. Thank you. Kat.